Hello, this is Jeremiah, host and producer of the Stereoactive Movie Club podcast, with a quick note before the show begins. This episode was actually recorded way back in September of 2021. Mia and I had a baby in the fall, and due to that, some health concerns leading up to the birth, and now actually being parents of a lovely little one, we had to unceremoniously put the podcast on hold for a while. We hope you'll bear with us as we work toward getting back on track with the show in the coming weeks and months, though. Now, here's the episode.
Stereoactive Movie Club. Stereoactive Movie Club.
Welcome to the Stereoactive Movie Club. My name is Jeremiah, and I am here with Alicia, Laura, Mia, and Steven. And we're going to be talking about the 1974 film, The Godfather Part II, directed by Francis Ford Coppola. But before we go on, let's hear from everyone about what movies they've watched since the last time we recorded. Alicia, how about you?
Well, I haven't watched any movies that I could think of. I did watch.
I'm tisking you.
You're fired.
I know. I did watch that Netflix September 11th anniversary documentary they put out, which was like a 4-episode long thing. So that was really depressing. And other than that, I've been reading books.
Ew.
So nothing too impressive though, just some English mysteries and
Of course.
yeah, distractions. That's about it.
Yeah, very on brand. Laura, how about you?
I've watched a bunch of movies, but the one that I want to mention is Badlands by
Nice.
Terrence Malick.
Yeah.
Sissy Spacek, Martin Sheen. And I'd never seen it. I thought I had seen it, but I think I just convinced myself I'd seen it because it's one of those films you should see if you care about movies. But I hadn't, and it was just so gripping and beautiful. I mean, obviously Malick and the up close and insect shot, was really interesting, but the music fit so well. It reminded me of the movies that it inspired.
Mm-hmm.
And just two films came to mind, and Natural Born Killers was one.
Yeah.
Which they MTV'd it. It was pre-social media, so it's just really
crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of bottom of the barrel, downtown Julie Bound version of Badlands. And then no offense, Julie. And True Romance was the other film that came to mind, and how the narrative and the lyrical aspect to the violence. It was really something.
And both of those written by Quentin Tarantino.
He wrote Natural Born Killers too?
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that.
I always wanted to do a Lovers on the Run film festival where it's They Live by Night, Bonnie and Clyde, Badlands, Natural Born Killers, I guess True Romance. I don't remember that movie well enough.
Yeah, they're on the run for sure.
Yeah, and I know there's others, but that I can't remember
There's
right now.
so many
Yeah,
others.
it's like a whole trope that I think is interesting. Mia.
I watched The Apartment, which I'd never seen before and was really fun and great. And that's it for movies. Getting through the last season of The Wire, finally. I took a 4-year break after watching the first few seasons because I was so depressed. And then I'll let you talk about Why the Last Man. But
Okay.
also watching that and really, really enjoying it.
Yeah. The Apartment was great. It was good to see that again. It's been a while and I'd forgotten all the details of it. Just remembered the broad strokes, premise of it basically. And yeah, I'm really enjoying Why the Last Man on FX. It's a pretty good adaptation of the comic book as far as I'm concerned, and does some smart things with it to make it feel more of the moment. Also on FX, I really like Reservation Dogs and I highly recommend it. If anybody
It's
has
great.
Yeah, it's such a great mix of hilarious and sad, and it's about trauma and stuff in a way that is very well done and very moving and hilarious.
I feel like such a nerd because I just think the music is so good.
It is.
And
It's great.
so my age.
Yeah.
That Halo Bender song that they just had in there, it's fuck, I love that song.
Yeah.
Maybe it was beat happening. Either way, it's like totally, but the mix of it, the rap, there's all these different genres.
Mm-hmm.
Not to discount how great the show is, because it's really smart and really interesting. But
Yeah.
usually when I focus on a music of the show, I think, God, they're just stealing everything and they're sucking the souls out of all the best songs. But it's just really complimentary, and they do it, and I think in a really beautiful way.
Yeah, I agree with that. Totally. And Steven, how about you? What have you been watching?
I've been working a lot, so I haven't seen any movies except for this one. And I managed to sneak in watching Taken 2 with Liam Neeson.
Thank God.
Which is like, yeah, it's about a 90-minute movie. So I was like, I think I can do this one. It was
If you only watch one thing this week.
If you watch one thing this week, make it Taken 2. It was
I'd like
fine.
to agree with you.
Well, we are talking about sequels, right, this
Yeah.
week. So,
Yeah.
it was entertaining. It was pretty ridiculous, and that's saying something considering Taken, the first one, was pretty ridiculous. But it was fun, and I completely forgot about it 10 minutes after I watched it. So.
It's my favorite kind of movie.
Yeah.
Well, then you can watch it again. It's like a whole new movie.
I'm like, oh,
True. So, for those who may not have listened to the show before, this is a podcast where the five of us are discussing movies that have appeared on Sight and Sound Magazine's poll of the greatest movies ever made that comes out every 10 years. The next poll will be out in 2022, so we're basically using that as our prompt to watch some classic movies ahead of it. And again, this time we're talking about The Godfather Part II. But before we get into the history and background of the movie, what did each of us know about it going into this viewing? Who had seen it before? And if not, what were you expecting, if anything? And Mia, since you picked this one, can you start us off and explain why you chose it as well?
Sure. So I had seen this movie before. You and I actually saw it at Nighthawk some years past, which was really fun.
Was it a date?
It was a date, yeah.
Was it like early on?
Pretty early.
Pretty early.
First 6 months, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'd seen it there. That was probably the only time I've seen this before. It was definitely the first time I've seen it, and I don't think I've seen it since then. And I thought it was great. I think it was great. I'm just going to go ahead and say I think it's better than the first one. And I chose it because my pick for the last round was The Godfather, and I'm an uncreative person, but mostly because I just wanted to watch them relatively close together, so that I just figured the conversation would be better that way for all of us rather than watching it potentially months from now. And yeah, and I was excited to go into this viewing, watching it, not just like sitting back in a movie theater and enjoying it, but to, know that we were going to be talking about it and analyzing it. So, yeah.
There you go. Steven, how about you?
I saw it maybe 20 years ago, right after I saw The Godfather, and then I saw it maybe 10 years ago. So I was excited to see it this time because we had just watched, as Mia had said, Godfather a few weeks ago, so it would be more fresh in my mind. So yeah, I was excited to see it just because I wanted to see what I picked up on. And if I was one of the few people, I think, or not few, but I enjoyed Godfather, the first one, better than the second one. So I wanted to see if that kind of held up, seeing them kind of close to each other again.
Okay. And Laura, how about you?
Obviously, these movies have been kind of important. I've seen them multiple times. I've seen this one not as much as the first one. I was ready and willing and able to watch it again.
Great. Alicia, how about you?
Yeah, this was my third time, I think, seeing this. And I have a lot of like respect and appreciation for this movie, but I don't like it as much as the original.
All right. So we got some suspense from some corners of the podcast, no suspense from others. We'll see where this goes. But so for me, yeah, like I think the last time I watched this all the way through was when Mia and I went and saw it, like she was talking about. And I think I came out of that viewing of it wondering if this should definitely be in the running for like one of the best movies ever made, because it's just like the scope of it is so impressive to me. And I'm not sure where I come down on it now. We'll get to that, but like that's where I was coming into it. I enjoyed it so much, and I think especially seeing it in that setting in a movie theater for the first time was great. And I think it opened me up to like how big and impressive the movie actually is after I'd seen it. I don't even know how many times before that on DVD or VHS before that over the years. I've now seeing the first and the second one on the big screen, and it's great to see these movies like that when possible. But I mean, I'll take them any way I can also. But yeah, anyway, that's where I was coming into it. I had like big expectations for my last viewing. So yeah. And so why don't we get a little bit into the history of the movie? The Godfather Part II both continues the story begun in the first film and deepens it by depicting what came before. We watch as Al Pacino's Michael Corleone continues in the family business, building his empire while trying to hold on to his family, both actual and figurative. This is crosscut with the portrayal of his father Vito's rise from an unfortunate child in Sicily to a respected man in New York, is deftly played by Robert De Niro. We watch as the older man builds his empire in order to, as he seems to view it, strengthen his family, just as the younger man causes his family to weaken as he extends his father's empire. Mario Puzo, the author of the novel on which the first movie and the overall saga were based, began working on the script for Part 2 before the first movie was even released. And, at least according to Coppola, the production of this follow-up was much more smooth than that of the first film, as that installment success afforded him greater opportunity for control and independence from the studio, Paramount Pictures. It was released in December of 1974, and though the critical reception was mixed at first, with the film's structure drawing the most consternation, reassessments began sooner than often happens. The film was nominated for many awards, earning 6 Oscars for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Supporting Actor for Robert De Niro, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Art Direction, and Best Original Dramatic Score. It was also nominated for 5 other Oscars: Best Actor for Al Pacino, Best Supporting Actor for both Michael V. Gazzo and Lee Strasberg, Best Supporting Actress for Talia Shire, and Best Costume Design. In addition to being the big winner at the Academy Awards that year, the film was also the 6th highest grossing film of 1974 in North America. To give a sense of what else was popular at the time, the 5 films ahead of it were, from 1 to 5, The Towering Inferno, Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, Earthquake, and The Trial of Billy Jack. The Godfather Part II was included in AFI's 100 Years 100 Movies list in 1998, ranked at number 32, and it stayed in the same spot when that list was updated in 2007. For our purposes, it gets a little messy. The film ranked number 9 on Sight and Sound magazine's survey of directors in 1992, but when it was paired with Part 1 for the survey in 2002, the 2 films collectively came in at number 4 on the critics' poll and at number 2 on the directors' poll. So Mia, since this again was your pick, can you start us off with your thoughts on the film after this viewing and whether it lived up to your memory of it?
Yeah, it definitely lived up to my memory of it. And the first time that I saw, the only time I've seen it before this was my first time seeing it. So obviously there was a lot of stuff that was like, oh my God, whoa, that happened. And, just the enjoyment of seeing it for the first time. I have a horrible memory for movies, and it was 6 years ago that I saw it for the first time. So I got to enjoy many of those moments again in the flashbacks when Vito kills the guy who killed his mother. Like, I was like, oh my God, like totally didn't see.
Chicho.
Yes, yes, exactly. I knew he was gonna kill him, so like it wasn't that, but just the slash across the stomach brutality of it. I was like, oh my God.
She really was.
Very violent.
It's very violent, yeah. So,
but in such a satisfying way.
Oh yeah, totally. Like I was like, yeah, kill him, because I've to me so much of the, that stuff that I thought about watching this movie, again, knowing that we were going to be talking about it, obviously, is like, what is strong, what is weak, when do you take revenge, when do you let something go, like just how all these things play out for all these different characters, and like when do you just kind of have to bite your tongue, when do you let loose and just give someone, a piece of your mind and stuff. So to me, I was sort of like, is he gonna come? It's been like all these years. Like there was part of me that was like, is he gonna do something? Even though I was like, I'm pretty sure he's gonna do something. So anyways, yeah, that was a fun
I have to say that's a beautiful question about this film to pose so quickly. Like, what is strong and what is weak? I think that means a lot in terms of the film.
Yeah. Well, the scene when Michael goes and is talking to his mother, and he's like asking about his dad, and I should have written down what the exact question was, but basically like about being strong and keeping your family together. And, not to skip ahead to our questions later, but that just really, that stuck with me, throughout the rest of the film, and just really informed how I looked at the whole film, of like the choices that we make and the choices that he's kind of forced to make by who he is and his role in the family, the choices that other people make, and just, ultimately like just this tension of strength and weaknesses. I think him saying he's going to take their business legitimate, but like never making any real moves in that direction. Also tying into like, is he being strong by that, or is he being weak and unwilling to change? I don't know, I'm sure we can get into all of that, but yeah. Did it live up to my memory of it? I mean, I would say it surpassed it. I was just like, oh, such a good movie. So good.
And Steven, how about you?
Yeah, it lived up to my memories of the movie. I thought it was really well crafted, and it was just really entertaining, and the performances were amazing. But I still did prefer the first one, I think, just because I think maybe because Robert De Niro showed up in this movie and he was so compelling from the get that I was just really gravitating towards the past scenes, just because he was such a joy to watch. And then also that story was sort of new, and it sort of put a lot of perspective into the man that Michael was. So for that, it was new to me just to see how he kind of evolved as a character and how he was in the first movie. And then in the second one, and the same with his dad, how he ended up, the way that he was. So it's sort of like a reverse. So for me, that was much more interesting. So whatever, I was always taken out of those scenes when we went to the present, when we saw Michael, I was sort of like, oh, I want to go back to seeing what Vito is doing. So it was always kind of in the back of my head. I kind of wanted those scenes to be over so I could go back to see what Vito was doing. But also, I felt like Michael was a lot more impenetrable in this movie, since he was we knew his evolution in his story, that when we saw him this time, he had sort of been kind of fully baked, and we sort of knew what he was going to do. And I don't know if it was just this viewing. I felt like it was he was an impenetrable, like he couldn't get touched, even though he was almost assassinated at the beginning of the movie. I didn't really feel like there was any jeopardy for him throughout the rest of the movie. So I felt like he was just going to get revenge and he was going to get his way. And I don't know if that's just the way that it sort of played out for me as I was watching it. But overall, I really did love the movie, and it just was, it was still really great, but I still did prefer the first one.
Steven, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
And forgive me, I did you say that there was aspects of the background with De Niro and the past stuff that made you appreciate the first movie more?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, just in terms of his personality and his connection to the family was just so much more. And you could see that in the first movie, how he doted on his kids, and he really loved his wife, especially in the parts before he became like an organized crime kind of person. I just saw how he treated his kids and just his family, and how important that was, or how important Italians were, because he's like, with the other person, the other Don that he had eventually killed, he was just like, how could he do this against other Italians? Yeah, it just felt to me that he just had a much more like view of family was different, I think.
Yeah.
So like it really played out in this movie, so you kind of understood it a little bit more.
That's very fascinating, and I think I have a similar view. Not to jump in, but
it's I mean, you're next anyway, so
yeah, exactly. I was done with my comments.
I love this film so much. I have a different relationship with this film than I do with the first one. And I mean, don't we all have like relationships with movies? Aren't we all dating them? I agree. The first one is perfect to me. This film is brilliant and beautiful, and there's so many scenes that I just hold close to my heart. But what I would take, and the reason why I like the first one better, is that the first one has this way of making us, they both make us complicit and like part of the family. But the first one, I feel like, makes us feel smarter and that we're in on what's going on. And this one is pretty nonlinear. And the first time you watch it, maybe the second time you watch it, you have to miss stuff. There's no way, and people can get it all. I was lucky, I feel, to rewatch it this time with someone who'd never seen it before. And we had to stop it multiple times so I can explain the scenario to them, the Cuba stuff, the kiss of death, all that, you know, and it wasn't because it was so, you know, lofty. It was just so much going on, so many different elements. And I know it by, you know, like the back of my hand, like the black hand on Fanucci. But I can't imagine people watching this on a first viewing and getting what you need to get out of the film. And that's why I like the first one over this one.
Right. Alicia?
Yeah, I do agree. I think the first movie is just a little tighter and a little more fun for whatever reason. The plot line with like Roth and Cuba and Pantangelo, it's very kind of convoluted. And I think it's supposed to be like, I think you're supposed to find it confusing because Michael's confused and he doesn't know actually like who's against him and who betrayed him until, you know, a little further in the movie. But I do love the Robert De Niro, Vito, Corleone scenes. I really enjoy that stuff. And the thing that I was thinking the most about after I finished it this time was like the whole anti-hero thing, and how we've watched like several movies now that have like the anti-hero as the main character, and the more we do them, the more it like hits home for me that like in our society right now, the anti-hero has become like the hero. And people just look at stuff like this as like cool or badass or something, and like they are more interested in the power and the money or whatever than the decline and the actual outcome for the person in the end and all the people around him. And yeah, it really I find it really troubling.
Yeah.
So I have mixed feelings about it. So
Sort of like Scarface and how that was taken and idolized.
Yeah.
That's how you feel this film has been.
I feel a lot of film, not just this one. I mean, I think there's a lot of movies, not necessarily even all like gangster movies, but just like what's the TV show Breaking Bad? I feel like people just like enjoyed like what's Walter gonna do next?
Right.
You know, it's like,
And that's
like,
interesting because I stopped watching that because I found it very disturbing.
Yeah, I mean, I did
episode.
finish that series, but I mean, hopefully I took the right message from it. But I
Right.
think a lot of
Well,
people in
yeah.
our society,
I mean, that's to me like what the difference is with this, but between this and like some other movies that don't do it as well, I guess, because I think the intention of the filmmaker and the artists who are making it like isn't to glorify this anti-hero. And in fact, I'm not even sure that I'm curious who you're calling the anti-hero here, because I would say Vito is an anti-hero, and it's possible that Michael isn't. He's just a villain by the end. That's what I think is interesting about this movie. And I think that, sure, some people like look at it and they're like, that's fucking badass. I want to be like that. And they're taking the wrong thing from it. And that's on them. You know, I'm not saying that you're saying otherwise, but that's what I think is interesting about movies like this, is that it does this weird thing that is easy to misread and take the wrong message from. And I think that's kind of the power of it too, is like when you get it and kind of understand what it is and have that realization, it's so much deeper than if you take the surface level sort of reading of it, of just like, wow, this is cool that this guy can pull all this shit off and like be an asshole to his wife and all this stuff. And that's kind of what I really like about this movie. I have complicated feelings about the whole, like, is it better than the first or not? Because like this movie doesn't work without the first movie. Like the first movie, if they never made another one, it would still be a masterpiece, I think.
I saw this film before I saw the first film.
Really?
Oh, interesting.
I can't imagine it making much sense, because it's like, to me, that this movie, going into it having seen the first movie, even the first time I saw this, after the first time I saw the first movie, it's so much about getting more depth on some of the characters that you've already seen, and then seeing in terms of Vito, and then seeing the story continue for Michael. and see his downfall. It's all about like the rise and the fall of this family all being told at once. And like that's what I think is also interesting about the cross-cutting of it, is that it's like they pick very particular moments to make those transitions from the present of the film to the past, and it's always like a thematic attachment between what's happening in the father's story with the son's story, of just sort of like a contrast of, well, this is how he dealt with this and why, and this is why Michael is doing it wrong, or showing you, like how he could have done it better. Because Vito's whole story is like I tried to write into the intro for this. I think it's about how he falls into this life because he is all about his family, and he wants to help his family and keep his family safe, and then through an extension of that, his neighbors in his neighborhood. But with Michael, it's more that he had the family, and he's more interested, or he takes his eye off the ball and gets too focused on the empire, thinking that is what you need to do to keep the family. Instead, and he just kind of loses track of what is going on with them and what his place is in the family, and loses them completely. So anyway, I feel like I'm talking too much right now, but
no, you're making sense.
But yeah, I think that the movie's super dense, and like
Yes.
I think it definitely takes multiple viewings. Like I have no idea how many times I've seen this movie now. Probably at least a half dozen, maybe as many as 10 times, and I'm still like noticing things, if not for the first time, at least things that like I've forgotten about. And I'm just like, oh my
Right.
God, I can't believe I missed this, or I missed the way that this connects to this other thing. And I think it also comes from just being older and having more life experience, and being able to recognize certain things in a different way at this point in my life, as compared to when I saw this when I was like probably 17 or something, and I just think it's one of those almost foundational works along with the first movie. Because like I guess the way I would parse it in terms of the question of what is better, I think the filmmaking of this movie is better, because I think Francis Ford Coppola, he's a filmmaker who has the experience of that first movie under his belt, as well as other work, and he's someone who is still progressing in his skills. And I think the storytelling and the art of it is more advanced, but it's hard for me to say that this movie can be better, because it doesn't make any sense without the first movie to me.
That's a really interesting idea. I mean, I think the filmmaking in and of itself, because I was talking to my aunt and my cousins today, and they were talking about how my grandfather loved this movie because he loved the scenes of young Vito Corleone coming to Ellis Island, and all of those scenes, because he said it was so true to life. So he would rewatch those scenes because it reminded him of what he went through. And just to be able to capture that, and what the Lower East Side was like at that time, it's genius what he did. But at the same time, I think this film does stand on its own.
I tend to agree with you. I think when you said that you watched this one first, for the first time, the first time you saw it, I was like, I mean, I think it would be a little tricky, but I think the first time you watch The Godfather, you're also like, wait, what happened?
They're very tricky films.
Yeah, it's not an easy film. It's interesting to me. What I was going to say real quick about the Ellis Island scenes is I loved those too, and I loved the all the different outfits that they show people wearing. I mean, I think it would have been really easy just to be like, oh, a bunch of people in kind of like bland, like generic, like European peasant wear, but there's like people clearly from like Russia in these like fur outfits, and just it really made me be like, oh yeah, like when people came to America, they wore what they'd always worn, and some of that is like not what you would then be walking around in New York City in, and what was that transition like? And yeah, I love that. It's interesting to me that they did the cross-cutting and the two different timelines in this film, and because you totally could have just taken the Vito plot line and made like a prequel movie later. Yeah. And I wonder if they were making these movies today, if that's what they would have done, because they would have been like, oh, we can get a whole other movie out of this, like the prequel.
I think that's a very interesting question. today, I think you're absolutely right. It would be completely different.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Especially if Michael Corleone were running the studio. He would definitely
yeah. Or either that, or it'd be a prestige series on HBO or something like
Right.
that.
Right.
But,
Yeah.
And then
but,
we
I
can
mean,
stream it.
That's the thing to me, though, is that like that's the genius of this movie, is that it has those two timelines cross-cutting, and like I said, there's these thematic attachments between the two characters that deepen each other as you go back and forth between them. And like I remember watching, because they've done things over the years with this saga where they like basically put it in chronological order.
Chronological order.
Yeah, they've done
Terrible.
that like on AMC or something years ago. I think.
Terrible.
And it just
Hated
like
it.
it destroys it. Like I don't
It
understand
does.
the inclination to do that. I guess it just it's taking away the artistry of what he does in this movie, in my opinion. But yeah,
Yeah.
Agreed.
I'm not saying there should be a prequel.
No, I
I'm
know,
just
I know.
saying.
No, we understood what you're
Yeah.
saying.
I'm curious, Alicia, we were talking before we got on and you were saying you figured out the oranges.
Well, I think I did.
Well, yeah,
I think
sure,
that maybe
okay.
I did. In this movie, not
Mhm.
necessarily the first one, but in this one, I noticed that it's kind of associated with like power and how people are using or achieving their power. Like when Don Fanucci is out walking down the street, he just like grabs an orange and goes, doesn't like talk to anybody, he just takes it.
Mhm.
And Vito gets given the oranges by the fruit vendor. So it's more like his community is saying, "Oh, you're worthy of like power," and then in the end, Michael is straight up like eating an orange as if it's an
Mhm.
apple.
Yeah.
He's
When they
I was
started
laughing
murdering
so
Hyman
hard.
Roth.
Yeah, that
biting
was so
into
odd.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So weird, but obviously just like eviscerating the
That's a
apple
power
and like
move.
yeah, like well, I'm just like destroying it,
Mhm.
like so or cheapening it or whatever.
I actually wonder, because it became a whole thing, especially with the first movie, where people were like, "Oh, there's always oranges in a scene where someone's gonna die," and then I think we talked about this when we talked about the first movie.
Mhm.
That was actually just sort of a coincidence, because the art director was like, "I just want to pop a color in these scenes, and oranges are a nice way to do that," and it just worked out that way. But I wonder if that was something that had been pointed out by the time they made this movie
Mhm.
and they decided to keep it going, or if it was still like an art direction thing more than anything, or what.
It was
I'm
full
really
on
curious.
weapon.
It's full on what?
A weapon of story.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
You would
Gotcha.
never. When have you ever in your life seen someone eating an orange the way Michael's
Not quite like
eating
that.
it?
Not
No.
like that.
I kind
It
of
is
want
weird.
to right now.
But I mean, I guess two of the three things that Alicia pointed out are still preceding a death, right? The Fanucci, I think he gets that orange and then he gets killed.
Mhm.
And then
Mhm.
when Michael is eating that orange, I think it's as he was
Plotting
basically,
Hyman Roth's murder.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Plotting
yeah.
an assassination. I think you're the instance where Vito gets the oranges. I don't think there's a death right after that, so it kind of breaks that pattern.
Mhm.
But I mean, maybe that's the one that proves the rule or something. I don't know.
Or maybe it's the death of like who he was before as
That's true.
just
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
an ordinary person.
I mean, I don't think there's nothing to that though, because like it really hit me this time watching it, of like how, earlier in the movie when he's offered a little bit of charity by someone, he turns it down because maybe it's a pride or something, and then he takes those oranges willingly. I mean, he has to be kind of convinced, but it doesn't take much convincing, and it is sort of like, I think you could see it as two sides of the same coin. Of maybe he sees like, okay, I'm respected now, so it's okay to accept this because it's a sign of respect, and that's what I wanted. But it's also maybe corruption, like that's the other side of what this respect is in this setting and in this dynamic. It's not just respect; it's a corruption that he's taking something that he didn't truthfully earn 100%. It's earned by someone else who's then paying it up, not forward, but up the chain.
I hear that you're using the word corruption, and that makes a lot of sense. But in the Italian mind, the
Mhm.
Sicilian mind, like perhaps it's a question of not insulting.
Well, sure.
Like there's that element as well. I'm not discounting what you're saying, but I think there might be other aspects.
Right, but I
Well,
think I think what you're saying also plays into that, though, is in that, like, what happens to him is he is in this new world, and he's trying to make a way for himself and his family and his associates, and the respect he's trying to earn, that he's sort of trying to go about it in a different way than the models he has before him of the Don in Italy and the Don in, I guess, Little Italy, I think is where they are, right? And he wants to have truly earned it instead of it just being something that is handed to him, right? But it's still that he expects something. He's just being a little more polite about it. And that's, to me, it's like a lighter corruption, I think.
I don't know. I disagree.
Well, that's fine too.
I kind of looked at it as like before he wasn't in a position to like accept, power or whatever. If you want to look at the grocer trying to hand him something as like a way to like, it's like a thing about power or whatever. But by the time the guy hands him the oranges, the grocer hands him the oranges, he's like, he's made his moves, and he's
Right.
like he's in a position to be like, okay, like, yeah, now you come to me and I'll do something for you when you need it. Like,
they gave it to him willingly instead of him getting it taken. So that just meant that like the society at large was okay with him taking on that role, and he was going to be a softer, more familial, like leader or, Don, as opposed to the other person that kind of ruled with cruelty. They were like, okay, we can give you this and this is going to be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, agreed. That's what I was trying to say. There's no more trying.
Mm-hmm.
It's like he earned that respect. It's his now.
But I do think, like, I think what Alicia was saying, though, is that this is still like a prototype version of what we see at the beginning of the first movie, of where, sure, he'll take your favor, but that means something is going to happen in return. Like, like that's
right.
what
It's
that's
very
the understanding.
transactional.
Yeah, it's exactly. That's a perfect word.
Yeah,
transactional.
understood.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Very good point.
Well, since we're talking about the kind of prequel element of this movie, I'm curious what everyone thought of De Niro's take on this character, because I like I said in the intro, I do think it's a very deft performance. I think that he's so good at getting at the character and even doing a little bit that hints at what Brando was doing without doing an impression, so it's not distracting. It's still its own creation, and it's attached to the character, like I said, more than the actor who played it previously, and also won an Oscar for it. So what does everyone think of that? It sounds like we all enjoyed it, but any specific thoughts on his performance?
I just love the subtlety of it. His face hardly registers any change in expression, but there's still like so much going on. You can still see how worried he is when the baby has pneumonia, how like his body is like tense and he's like, scared, and how sort of when he's first when De Niro first kind of comes on, he's kind of he's serious but like nice, but kind of like he's not walking around smiling all day long.
Right.
But like at the sort of the further you get in his story, you can tell that he's like starting to enjoy like his position, like when the landlord comes in and is like bumbling around trying to
the door.
He's just and he's just like smiling and he's like, this is great. And like he just does so much with so little. I think it's like a masterful performance, actually, and totally not an impression. He's not trying to do what Brando did. He definitely like gives it his own thing, but it's also still in line with what Brando was doing. Like I just think it's wonderful.
I think he does a good job of showing you the seeds of the character without like going over the top and like tipping the hand, so to speak.
Yeah. Seeing your mother being killed and your family being killed and then having to go to America by yourself, and just seeing the continuation when he was a child to him as he grew and became part of that society, you understood it.
He personified that.
Yeah, exactly.
I got to give it up to Bruno Kirby.
Yes.
So fucking amazing.
Yeah.
As a young Clemenza.
Yeah.
Robert De Niro is beautiful. Beautiful. You can't like touch it. It's like work of art. But Bruno Kirby is just so dynamic and just he steals every scene and it's amazing. I love it. I love it so much.
I feel that way about Lee Strasberg playing Roth. I feel like he steals every scene that he's in. There's so many
man.
good performances
Yeah,
in this.
I was gonna
there
say I feel
really
that way
are.
about John Cazale as
Mm,
Fredo.
yes.
Like,
Oh
like
my
so much
gosh,
of this
yeah.
movie is him, and it's
Yeah.
like,
It's very good.
oh my god, it makes me so sad when I think about like how little of him there
You got
is.
of him?
Yeah,
Mhm.
but like he's in like 5 movies and all of them giant, you know?
I know.
Yeah, what a career.
God, what a gift.
Yeah. Anyway,
One thing that I thought, yeah, everything everyone said, Robert De Niro, amazing. I loved all the flashbacks. I can't imagine coming to America at the age, like, what was he supposed to be, like 9, 12?
Yeah, 9.
9.
I wish they'd almost done a few scenes of like how did he survive from 9 until 18 or whenever
Mhm.
it picks back up. But one thing for me, especially when they go to Italy in the flashbacks, just his such intense love for his family and for his children specifically.
Yeah.
And, throughout the whole thing, like at the beginning when he's like, oh, it's just my wife and my son. That's like all I care about. That's my world. And
Mhm.
just, as he gains more power and more influence and more money, obviously, like that still remains. And then just contrasting that with, Michael and Connie too, who are just like, Michael is just psychotically like obsessed with the idea of his children, but like spends zero time with them.
Mhm.
Yeah, he doesn't nurture them at all. Like
No.
you see
At
more
all.
nurturing from Fredo.
Yeah,
his
right.
son. Yeah.
That's where I was going.
Sorry.
It's okay. And I mean, from the first movie, like I don't remember Sonny really giving two shits about his kids either. They're
No.
just kind of there. And, Michael, especially with his obsession with, oh, was it a boy? Which I definitely want to talk about the abortion fight because that's a whole separate discussion. But he doesn't care about his kids. Connie clearly doesn't care about her children. But then Fredo is, teaching the son how Anthony, right? I think is his name, how to fish, and it seems to be the only one who actually cares about this, cares about the children, cares about the next generation. And so just that difference between these two generations here. I mean, I feel like that's, again, like the larger theme of the movie, but just really, really hit me watching it.
I feel like Vito had his family taken at such a young age that he values it so much when he's able to make his own family. And for Michael, he just takes it for granted. And it's the family has always been there for him.
Right.
And obviously he starts to confront the fact that that's changing, but it's just an ego thing. I really think he feels like he's entitled to this wife and these kids and this American dream or whatever he's chasing. And it's very, very different from Vito.
I think it was just that Michael wanted to be like his father, but he didn't see the whole picture. Sometimes he just saw like the nuts and bolts of it. Same with the business. Like he was running it in a completely different way, even though he was the Don. He didn't run it like his father, and he was just having issues with that. And I think that's what stemmed from a lot of his problems with that. Just seeing people as kind of objects and not as like a real family. It's like family with a small f versus family with a big F.
Right.
Yeah, even the advice that he recalls that his father had given him. I think there's maybe 2 times that he mentioned something his father told him, keep your friends close, but keep your enemies closer. And then one other one that I can't remember right now. But he kind of messes up at both of those
I
things.
think how the people around you think.
Yes. And he screws up on both of those things. He
definitely
remembers the advice, but he doesn't actually understand it and take it in. Yeah.
The very last scene, well, I guess not the very last one, but the flashback at the end when it's, all the kids are still alive and they're sitting around the table and it's Pearl Harbor Day and just the interactions and everything. And then, everyone goes downstairs except for Michael. And it just really broke my heart watching it, even though you're you did this, maybe not Sonny. That was a different, different thing there. But you literally either killed these people or drove them away from you or alienated them all. But it still is just so oh man, it didn't have to be like this.
Well, you can see even in that scene that he made a decision about what he wanted to do. He didn't consult anybody else.
Yep.
he didn't take into consideration what his father might have been trying to do behind the scenes at all for him. And then everyone's mad at him and it's like,
Yeah.
Right.
they just
Well, I
leave
feel
him there.
Yeah. Well, and it's like I feel like he was so like, oh, I'm going to be the one that's different. Like,
Yeah,
I'm this
yeah.
exception.
Right.
And he was set up to be like that, right? Like, he was going to be the senator. Like, the life he ended up having wasn't his intended path.
He was like the one who was like the loner of the family. He didn't want to be part of the family business. And then he, at some point, decided, like, I have to be part of the family business to help the family survive. And then him doing that leads to the point where he's a loner again. Like he started off, like he is a loner and he is alone. Like I noticed it this time, like that. Yeah, it cuts straight from everyone's left the room and he's the only one at the table in that birthday party scene, and then it cuts to him alone in his older age, and it's just he was destined to be alone, I guess, in terms of this family. The only way he could have gotten out is if everything had gone different in terms of like the stuff in the first movie, and he hadn't gotten sucked into it. But maybe that was never going to happen. Maybe it was all just like, that's the point, is that he was never going to be able to escape this.
Yeah. We plan and God laughs.
Yeah, he had a choice up until the last 5 minutes of the film.
I mean, I think he blows it well before that, though.
Honestly, the murder of Fredo, I think, is the end of his soul.
Yeah, I mean, sure. That doesn't help.
Yeah. Well, that's
So
why
I don't think that I don't know. I feel like in the context of the film, the previous murders.
You think he could have like
Makes
clawed his
sense.
way back with like Kay and stuff?
Yeah, I think Kay was
Not
gone.
with
hitting
Kay.
her.
I mean, marriages end.
Yeah.
That's not the end of that's done. And Italian men, have a thing about their kids, like, fine.
But there was no warmth, like Mia was saying before.
There's no
like,
warmth at
yeah.
all. I mean,
He doesn't know
even-
how to be a father. He just knows how
Absolutely.
to own
Absolutely.
kids. They're like trophies to him of like a life he thinks he's supposed to lead.
100%.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
But
I think he's already done. But when this movie begins, I think he's like already. We're just
know.
watching him roll down the mountain or whatever.
Right,
I
yeah.
respect that.
Snowball.
I do not feel the same way.
Yeah, that's fair.
Well, that was to me like with my question about like strong or weak, especially the last, 30 minutes or so of the film when he decides to still go and kill Hyman Roth, even though Tom is like, he's going to be dead in like 6 months, man. Like, do we really have to? And then the thing with Fredo and convincing the other guy who's in military prison, presumably, I mean, I don't know if they ever say exactly how long, but like he's pretty old already. He's
Frank Pantangeli.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Mhm.
He's going to be there for a while. If and when he ever gets out, is he really going to be a threat? But like,
He would never get out. It was the only way to secure his family, to have money, to be safe and
Sure.
not.
Yeah.
It was.
You
I'm
mean he
sorry
would-
to interrupt you.
he would never get out of prison.
No.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, I think either whatever sentence he has for lying to the US government, he's either in there forever or he's just going to like get, he's old. He's going to get sick and die in there and everything. But it's like they convince him to kill himself.
He's the one who brought up suicide, though.
No,
I feel
he's
like
led there by
yeah,
Tom. Totally.
when they're talking
I
about
think
like, the
it's
downfall of the Roman
There's an
Empire.
understanding between them of like,
Yeah.
you're going to make
Yeah.
this happen for us, right? And
Right.
then we'll take care of your family, just like the old
Right.
Fair.
Roman
Yeah.
Empire used to do.
Right. Yeah. But to me,
Yeah.
it was just this so like none of these three people, excepting maybe Fredo, which I don't even know. I like go back and forth on that, are like any actual still threat to you. But he's like, they got to die. They can't just like die naturally in 6 months of whatever disease has been killing this old man forever. Or let this guy rot in prison, or just like keep Fredo under close watch and let him teach your son how to fish. Like
Right.
he's just so
It's
warped in his
punishment.
brain.
To me, I feel like the Fredo thing is on such a different level than the other.
Oh
God.
yeah.
of
I mean, it's
course.
his brother, and it's
Yeah.
like his last. I mean, I guess he still has Connie, but she's just like her plot line in this movie was so weird to me too.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
like wait, what? Like, I feel like I missed something here where she just gets so broken by her mother's
Well, wouldn't
death.
you?
Yeah, no, I was just, because it's like at the beginning of the movie, I was actually like, oh shit, Connie, because she's like basically has written off her kids, is jetting around, like living this very glamorous, irresponsible, at least in Michael's view, life. And then you don't really see her again. And then she's like, basically like, I'm here, take care of me, let me take care of you. I don't know, like what, it just feels like there was like a scene that got cut in there. Maybe I just need to watch the movie again though. Laura,
I kind of chalked it up to the death of the mom, the death of the
Yeah.
mother.
Well, yeah.
That's what I was
maybe that's
thinking.
it. Yeah. It just seemed like a lot to me.
No, I agree with
It's
you.
a big
It does
break.
kind of.
Well, the way she also played that when she got back, she was definitely different than when we first saw her in the movie. She was like
Right.
really kind of downtrodden a little bit, like, oh, you know what? I'm happy to come back. So
Yeah, but I do think it's interesting that she immediately like pledges loyalty to Michael and tells him like, I'll be here for you, I'll be here to take care of you, I'll take care of the kids. And then like I think the next scene with her is her like basically defying Michael by letting Kay see the kids. So there's still like a little bit of that rebel spirit in her, even though I don't think it's like played up for much more than that, but she's still her own person to some degree.
Forgive me. It wasn't her seeing the kids. It was her saying goodbye to the kids.
Yeah, I thought it was.
left.
I thought like he knew she was there, but he just didn't want to have to see her.
I think no, that was her goodbye.
Oh,
That
like
was the
for
moment
final
she
goodbye.
left
Oh, okay.
the house.
I thought that she had not been able to see the kids for a while, and then Connie was letting her see them. I mean, I don't think they make it clear, so like I
Yeah.
don't think
Yeah.
They
either
didn't
one
make
of us
it
is
clear. It's
right or
interesting
wrong.
that was your
Mhm.
perception.
Yeah.
that
To
was
me,
mine
it
too.
was- She was just there until she was able to escape, and that was her escape.
I mean, she's gone already at that point. Like she,
I didn't think so.
but no, when they were in that hotel after the
When he hit her,
after the
that doesn't
hearing.
mean she's gone.
I mean, he
Not
told.
even a little bit.
I thought she said she was leaving, and then
Yeah, but
he
that doesn't
told
mean
her to leave.
anything.
Okay. Well,
Well,
different interpretation.
I
then.
think it's ambiguous. I thought it was more kind of a like, maybe she's kind of like how he's like with Fredo, like, tell me when you're coming to visit mother, because I just don't want to be there. I kind of assumed it was like that with Kay. Like, as long as I don't see her,
Right.
I'm fine with that, but like just assuming it would have to be pretty limited, and
That was my take.
yeah,
too.
and that
Sorry.
Connie was like facilitating it, but was like, he's gonna be back, like you need to get out of here. So
Right.
but I didn't think about it, what you brought up, Laura, and that could totally be, I mean, I think they don't say, so yeah.
Yeah, I think
Either
way, it
way,
was like-
I do see your point about Connie being defiant because it's like the kid's mother,
Mhm.
like she's human.
And she kind of pushes for Fredo too, like she's
Yeah.
right.
He
when
does,
she goes,
and that's
she's
why
like,
he
"Fredo's
went in
here."
there.
Yeah.
And
So maybe she's not totally broken, but it was just, she has a big arc without a lot of points along
Yeah,
the
the
way.
nuance is
Yeah,
kind of
exactly.
missing for her.
Yeah.
I would say she's underwritten, but
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
there's
yeah.
so much with
I
what
agree.
she's got.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think this is the era where, like, I mean, not that everything's about awards or something, but I just think it's like kind of interesting that she got an Oscar nomination for this part. But I think this is the era where people would have like one scene and then get a nomination off of it. Like that happened in Network. Someone had like a 7-minute scene and got a supporting actress Oscar for it, not just a nomination. And so I think she got a nomination for that scene with Michael. And not that it matters the nomination or not, but like it's just
No, I think
don't
she's
know.
really good.
she's good in
like,
the
I was
scene
like,
she's
oh,
in.
I
but,
want more Connie.
Yeah, I agree with
Yeah.
you. I think it could use more of her, and
Well, especially because she's in the only literally the only, well, I guess Tom, but poor Tom.
yeah.
But wait, can we talk about the abortion breakup scene?
Well, what is your question about it for people?
I don't know if I have a question. As I was watching it, I was like, oh, wait, I remember this scene from when I saw it years ago, because it's such a like striking scene. And, I'm sure at the time, 1974, right? Like it was probably pretty like, oh, whoa, like she just said abortion like 6 times in 5 minutes. Like that's pretty scandalous. And I understand in the context of the movie, like, oh, whoa, this is a scandalous thing for this like conservative Catholic Sicilian family for this to happen, for her to make the decision without consulting with her husband. I think based on the 3.5 months, it would be too early to know if it was a boy. So I had like a slight, like,
I think
science.
I think they're
they
playing
know.
a little fast.
Yeah, but that's fine. I get it. It's like way more impactful if she's like, it was a boy or a son, whatever she says, as opposed to just it being unknown.
Right.
It's just such a big scene. And really, when she's like, our marriage is an abortion, it's a little much. In a movie where so many things are so subtle and so many other performances are so subtle, it like stands out to me in this really big way.
Yeah, I think we get that the marriage is an abortion without you having to say it. It's like all you get, like our marriage is an abortion. Like you just said abortion 5 times. Now you're talking about the marriage. We get it. Okay.
I'll up you guys. Like I watched that film since I was a little girl, and every time I see that scene, I'm just like, of course he's gonna hit you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I wanted to bring that up too, like because
and
Alicia,
it's disgusting.
Alicia
But
has
I'm just like, shut the fuck up! Like you are literally like about to get hit. Just stop.
Also,
I know it's horrible to have that thought, but I have it every time I watch that scene.
No, I mean I think that's natural. Alicia, what
Is it natural or just like self-hating? Because it just it's so
that.
much like, what are you doing? It's what are you doing?
In
like,
the context
stop.
of knowing the person that Michael is, like
what?
I know we're all a lot more educated.
I know you
about
married
like,
him. You're the one.
Like
7 years. All of a sudden,
well, she's turned a blind eye to
all of a sudden it's an abortion.
Alicia, what were you going to say?
That kind of what I always think of. I think that scene is so clearly written by a man to be like hurtful in this very specific way to him. I mean, I don't think it's like saying that what he does is understandable or anything, because it's obviously still portraying him in a really bad light. But I do question whether someone that's already a mother, has been pregnant for 3.5 months, would just like be like, I mean, and maybe women do that, but like, I'm sure they do. Actually, I know they do, but like, I don't know. It just felt like a really like this like harsh line for her to choose to cross when she is already like kind of in this marriage and like she's been there for this long and she already has 2 kids. Why would you then just be like, I'm just gonna like? I mean, I guess she has hit her.
Yeah, I mean, someone did just shoot at them in their bedroom. You know,
that's true. That's true. I mean, but it just seemed like, I don't know. It feels like so harsh to me. It feels like
it's so hard to
harsh...
be on her side in that scene.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm pro-choice. Like, of
me
course,
too.
like make the decision that's right for you. Obviously,
absolutely.
But it does feel really like, I don't know that a woman would decide to get an abortion just to like punish and use it in that way to like, you know, be like vengeful almost about it. I don't know.
I guess I don't read it as vengeful. It's more just like almost
I think saving
another life from having to enter into this.
Well, I don't think she does it for vengeful reasons, but I think she throws it at in his face for vengeful reasons. And that's what feels a little harsh and unrealistic to me. I don't know.
Very difficult scene for me.
Yeah.
I didn't read it that way. I felt like she really wanted to shut the door on her marriage, and that was the way to do it, so that he would never come back and try to get her back. He's very possessive. He wants the family to be the way that he wants it. And this is a line that will just, you can't cross that. Yeah. And after that, it was over. So I just felt like that's why she did that, and that's why she said that to him. So there would be just no going back from there.
Yeah, I agree with you, Stephen. I do think what you said, Alicia, is very interesting, though, that it's so clearly written by a man. Like, I never thought of it that way, and I think that's a very good point.
I don't think a woman would ever, even, I can see Kay making that choice,
right?
But I don't see her ever saying that to him. Because I just think by her making that choice and by him knowing that she did, she is risking losing her other 2 children, which she does.
Did lose them.
Right. No, and she does. And I wonder if, I get what you're saying, Stephen, and like I agree. She probably was like, I need to shut this door so hard. but I just maybe she didn't think through, like, by shutting that door so hard, I'm going to put my kids on the other side of the door there. And
Sometimes you just have to escape to save yourself. And
yeah,
that's
oh
the
totally.
choice that
Yeah,
she made in that scene.
yeah, totally. But I
Right.
just think knowing how violent he is, knowing how dangerous he is, like, and just knowing how psychotic he is, like
how
Right.
powerful he is.
right, how
Yeah.
powerful he is, exactly. Like, I don't see her being dumb enough, frankly, because Kay's not dumb, right? Like, she's like a smart woman, or at least she goes into this being smart.
She's like willfully naive, though.
Yeah,
I
I think that's
mean,
true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do think there is an important like mechanical element of the scene though that like Alicia was saying earlier, Michael is so, I don't think you use the word stoic, but that's how I would describe it. He's so like just emotionless or something throughout, just so calm, and I don't know if collected is the right word because it doesn't go well for him in the end.
He doesn't raise his
Yeah,
voice above a
but
whisper.
this is
most
like
of the
one of
movie.
the moments. There's a few times where he yells in this movie, and it's always so like I sit back because it's just like,
Terrifying.
yeah, it's terrifying. And this moment, like he reminds me of like a fucking panther because he just like all of a sudden jumps at Kay, and it takes me by surprise every time I've seen it. Even though like you said, I know that something is going to happen, but it's just such a quick movement
Horrible.
and so violent, and he like knocks her over, and it's so shocking even though I know it's coming. And I think there's an importance to it in showing that like this isn't all just like abstract for him. You know, you can make the argument that he doesn't do any of the killing, he doesn't do any of the violence, he
He's not a
facilitates
button
it.
man.
Yeah, he does. He has it done for him, but like he is also a fucking violent person, his own self. And this is like, I think,
Well, he did
shows
kill
that.
Saluzzo, and
sure, in the first movie, yeah,
Yeah.
but he had to.
of course,
Yeah.
right, and
Or at
you're on
least
his
that's-
side in that movie. I think is the power, like the
100%.
power of the filmmaking there. But yeah, anyway,
Incredible.
I wonder how it would have, like, say, this is my rewrite as I,
let's rewrite the Godfather. Sure.
No, just, I think she leaves him, and then I picture her and Connie talking like later, and her telling Connie. I can see
Yeah.
that being the more realistic thing that would happen. And
Yeah,
then
not
maybe
as dramatic though.
sure, yeah. I mean, so I write a boring movie, but
Maybe he's in the other room when it's happening and he
Yeah.
overhears the conversation.
or maybe
Mhm.
Connie tells him or something. Like, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Yeah. So there wouldn't be this like over the top scene. I don't
It's
know.
a tough scene.
I think you guys are veering off into the Prestige limited series territory again.
I'm just trying to get more Connie
Yeah.
in, and I can see that being a really good, like, if this movie had a female writer in the room,
Yeah.
that being a really powerful scene there.
They should do something with Connie now. And you know how they're
Sure.
doing like a Soprano prequel? They should do like a Connie.
Who would play her?
Oh, what a good question.
Talia Shire could still play her, and if you wanted to do like middle-aged or retirement age.
Well, I thought she said a
Connie.
prequel to this.
Oh, prequel.
Oh,
Oh, sorry.
Oh my
sorry,
god,
then,
it would
yeah.
be so good to
Oh,
see all
not
this
prequel,
from Connie's
like
Like a
perspective.
de-ager.
Yeah.
They could DH her. They could
I
do
think
Good Year
there's
Evan
so
Hansen
many
her.
stories untold with Connie. that I
Yeah.
think there's-
Yeah.
Well, even just that one scene when they have her meeting, what's his name at the
Carlo?
yeah, at the very end. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Here we go.
You know,
Yeah.
I read that James Caan was paid the same amount he
Yeah.
was paid for Godfather Part 1 for that one scene.
Yeah, he didn't, yeah.
What?
I mean,
Oy
I
vey.
don't know if that says more about like how much he got paid for the first movie. Or,
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's,
Yeah.
the budget. And
yeah.
Yeah.
it doesn't say, I don't think it says anything bad about Caan, but
No.
Oh, good
no.
for him.
Just
Get
Yeah,
that
good
money.
for him. Yeah. And also like Brando was supposed to be in that last scene, and then just
right. He didn't show up.
he didn't show up because
feel
he
good.
was mad at Paramount or something. So they had to
Thank
bring
God
that
he
in
wasn't in
spot.
that scene because
Yeah,
I know.
I don't think it would have been
I
good.
didn't-
I think
yeah,
it's
you
good.
didn't need him.
You
Yeah.
didn't need him.
it was
Marlon Brando, who needs him?
No, I think it's good that he's like this looming presence better than
Yeah.
more than he's in it. I
And
think
the-
I
and
think
the
it would be
first-
so weird to just
Yeah.
like have Marlon Brando there after
For
we've
like
been watching
15 seconds
Just
or
Yeah.
like sitting there
something.
like, oh, for me.
Well, I think it would have been a
Oh.
different scene.
It's
You
my
can
cake.
rewrite it, but-
My cake is here.
So my question was, Michael says throughout the film he is trying to be strong for his family, like his father was. By the end of the film, do you actually see him as strong or weak? the choices that he's making, like, are they, in his mind and in your mind too, are they worth it, quote unquote?
I'm wondering, because when you see him at the end, it seems like it wasn't worth it. I mean, just from where his, when he's kind of looking off into like the past, it seems like all the decisions that he made just were not, they were kind of done for the good of like what he thought the family should be and his perception of it, and everything supported that. Even like the party at the beginning, he sort of wanted to take all the Italian stuff out of that party in order to like be accepted, and it still wasn't working for him. So I feel like he was making these decisions, but they were, it's just like you made bad decision after bad decision, but after a while you just can't even turn the ship. It's just like it's too late. So you have to kind of stick to your guns and do what you were going to do for the family, the way that you perceive the family to be. So I think that he thought he was strong, but he was making weak decisions.
I'm on the fence because like I think he kind of gives up the game a little bit when he is asking his mother about this thing, because he's sort of like telegraphing that he knows he's actually weaker than he pretends to be. I think in that scene, because he's like, "What am I doing wrong here?" Is essentially what it comes down to. Like, how did Dad do this? And
But he's still in charge. He's the one driving the whole thing.
Right.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I think
He's
so
Yeah,
he's
his
the one who
mother's-
can fuck it up the most.
and then he kills Fredo. So
Yeah. His mother's response to that was like, you can never lose your family.
Right.
So he was
Like,
just
you
thinking, like,
can.
I can make these decisions. I'm not going to lose them.
And he's like, "Hold my beer."
Yeah,
He does
exactly.
say times are changing after she says that. So
That
it's
is
like
true.
I think he recognizes that he actually is on thin ice, but he still makes all the wrong
Right.
decisions anyway. I think it's a very like surface. I don't know if surface level is the right word, but it's like a very like toxic masculinity sort of idea of what strength is and what weakness is. And there's like that sort of, to me, it ties into like the anti-hero thing that I talked about at the beginning, but it also ties into like what type of strength we value in our society. And it's like a really big question, because there are so many people that would come and say, yeah, he is strong and he made these strong decisions, and everybody that abandoned him was weak. And Fredo was weak, and Fredo is weak, like that's true. And he does like technically like win in the end, like in terms of he maintains his power over his enterprise. So that is kind of strength. But yeah, like the question is like, at what cost? And is that really strong? Like, what's it worth to hang on to that? And there's all questions about like how America acts in this movie, and how we're like meddling in, Latin America with sending our like government proxies down there and installing dictators. And, it's a really big question about like, what does America view as strength and weakness, and how do we exercise that stuff? And yeah, it's a lot.
Well, I think it's also, I mean, I've never seen Godfather 3. Jeremiah convinced me, or tried to convince me to start watching it at like 11 o'clock last night. And I was like, no, I'm good.
don't watch it.
Don't watch it. Is that what you
No.
said? Yeah.
I
I'm
haven't seen
not-
it either.
It's
Yeah.
definitely a drop off.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard it's not good, but I wonder, like, okay, so this movie ends here, but say, like, okay, he does still have Connie. What is her future? He has his 2 children. There's no doubt in my mind that Michael could just like remarry someone, have some more kids, so he still has a family that he's building. He still has Tom, despite his like horrible treatment of him. And, he still has people who are willing to serve him. He still has all this power. So I feel like the movie ends at this really low point for him, but I don't know if he's going to stay at that low point.
Yeah, it's an emotional low point. It's like a mental low
Yes.
point, but technically he is still in a
Yeah.
position of strength.
Yeah.
So it's
Like
it's a
he's beaten the
paradox.
government, this thing looming over him. And I'm not saying like, I mean, obviously I think he's a total psychopath. And I think if he does get married again, I see no reason why it would end up like that differently than how his marriage with Kay does. Like, I don't think he's ever going to be like a happy person, like it seems like his dad was with his family. And like, he's always going to be in the pursuit of greater power, greater ego, all of these things at the expense of those individuals around him. But I can see him rebuilding his family as objects to a certain extent.
I'm curious though, like, are you saying that because you kind of know that there's more story, or
no? Even if there wasn't a Godfather 3, I would just say the movie ends here, but like Michael doesn't die and he's not old. You know, there's no reason to think why wouldn't he get remarried? He's supposed to be like 40 when the movie ends.
Well, I think
maybe?
that last shot of him, he's supposed to be older. It's still not clear how old, but I think some time has passed. There's like a little gray in his hair or something. But I don't know. I guess to me, like if I was watching this movie in 1974 and the credits roll, I'm like, oh man, he fucked up and he screwed up his life and he's done. Like, you know, that would be my takeaway from this. I wouldn't be thinking like, oh, there was some ambiguity about he might be able to pull it out and kind of go a different path or something. Like, it seems like the message at the end of this movie is that was not worth it, you know, for him. He fucked up his life, he fucked up his family, and this is what happens to you if you try to have it all.
He screwed up his life, screwed up his family. He could just make another one.
Yeah.
Because
like he's a powerful, right? Yeah. Exactly. He's a powerful rich man in America.
Sure.
Why wouldn't he just be able to start over?
So on that level, I could see it being a probability.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I just never would have thought that at the end of this movie.
I had the same thought as Mia. Like, I always think that it's a little like you get that, like, he's in a destroyed mindset on a personal level at the end there. But yeah, he does still have everything that you need in life to go out and do whatever you want.
And I also think in his mind, he's justified for all of
yeah. Okay. Fuck her. Like, are you kidding? She aborted his child. Like, he doesn't feel like he screwed up the marriage. It's not like he's gonna like go to therapy and like start to work on his traumas or anything. Like, he's just gonna repeat the same mistakes. We saw Gone with the Wind several years ago now, and at the end of it, you were basically saying, why wouldn't she get Rhett back? Because for those who haven't seen, like, they're not together at the end. Like, why wouldn't she? She's always gotten him back before. You know, she's going to pull herself up. She's going to put on a dress. She's going to go on out there and, like, she'll convince him. It doesn't matter that she's at this super low point right now. And it's kind of the same thing here. Like, it's like these two extremely psychologically damaged people, but they have all the tools in their toolbox that they need to go out and build the same life again. I'm not saying that, like, Scarlett O'Hara is going to be a better person. Neither is Michael Corleone, but like, there's no reason to think that their story ends at this down point.
The thing is, though, Scarlett does say, like, Michael's just sitting there like catatonic at the end, and Scarlett says, like, tomorrow is another day.
True.
Yeah, I mean, Gone with the Wind.
True.
Gone with the Wind is largely the story of her overcoming adversity, and Godfather 2 is largely the story of Michael fucking everything up. So, like, I don't come away from the end of this movie thinking he is improving his circumstance. He's just gonna keep being an asshole.
But he is improving his business circumstances. He's eliminated all of these rivals at this point.
I know,
like,
but isn't the question of the movie at what cost? Because, like, he doesn't have a family left. Like, he has the wrong family left.
But so does Scarlett. Who does she have? She's driven away her husband. She basically killed her child. She has no friends. Like,
I don't think it's the same thing.
Sure, it's not the exact same thing.
What's everyone's favorite scene?
Well, I'll say one that, like, struck me this time. Like, I've always enjoyed those scenes that we were talking about earlier of young Vito coming to America, but like it hit me harder this time for some reason. The two shots of Vito first on the boat seeing the Statue of Liberty, and then the shot of him after he's gone through the immigration stuff, and he's basically seeing the statue again. And I love the shot. I've always loved this shot of the reflection of the Statue of Liberty on the window that he's looking through. So we see him in the same shot as the statue, but it never really like hit me previously how much it's about like perception of freedom versus being in a prison. Like he's arriving there as a free person and then is immediately imprisoned by this country. And he's seeing the Statue of Liberty through a prison window, essentially. I know it's a hospital, but Like he is being quarantined and he's being told essentially like, you're starting at below the bottom right now and you have to figure this out. And it just kind of hit me in a different way this time for some reason than it had previously. That just like the way that sequence is framed by those two shots of the statue. What is everybody else's favorite moment or scene or whatever?
I didn't have like a favorite scene. I mean, I really loved, like I said, I loved all the Vito parts of this movie. But I think my favorite thing that I noticed was that it's a parallel to the first movie. There's like two weddings in the first movie. There's at the beginning, there's Connie's wedding party. You don't see the full ceremony, and Michael's first wedding. And in this movie, you start off at a funeral, and then later on you have their mother's funeral. So there's like two funerals in this one. So the first one is like committing to a way of life, and this one is like that way of life like destroying you. So I like that in any particular scene, I guess.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, one of my favorite scenes, there were so many in this movie, but one that really struck me just as a rewatch since I saw it before, was when Frank Pentangeli or Pentangeli, how do you say his name? I can't remember.
Pentangeli, you got it.
Yeah, when he was at the party at the beginning and he was complaining to the band, there's not a single Italian in here, and wants to get them to play like an Italian song, and then it devolves into Pop Goes the Weasel.
Yeah.
Just because it was just like, it was Michael trying to become legitimate, but it was just not going to happen, and people were going to make a joke of it. And I thought that was kind of an interesting way to look at it, and, trying to still maintain, his Italian heritage, but yet wanting to go legitimate, and it just wasn't going to work. So I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah. I have two favorite scenes. In the flashbacks, where Vito was following Don Fanucci over during the festival on the rooftop, and you can just see the image of him over the rooftops.
The tracking shots.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Those shots were just so, to me, it's like a painting. So beautiful. Love them.
Yeah.
Always did. Still do. And in the present day, I guess it was 1959. Michael, why are the blinds open?
Yeah. It's a good
I mean,
moment.
that's just, nothing comes close to that kind of jarring, like hair raising, the back of the neck. It's just incredible what they did with that scene.
When you said that, I felt the hair on the back of my neck. Even before you said hair on the back, I was just like, oh yeah, God.
I mean, it's just fucking great.
It is great.
Fucking
Yeah.
great.
I mean, like we've all said, so many great scenes. For me, the time from when they're in Cuba and when they're all at the show and Fredo slips up and says he knows the guy, and you just see Michael being like, wheels in his head turning, but just standing there like solid stone.
For a minute.
For a minute, yeah.
I think it's actually the most truly emotional you see him, because then he kind of doubles over, like he's just like, looks like he's about to fucking die of just
He's
like
in pain.
grief.
Yeah, but he doesn't like.
Heartbroken.
To me, you'd be like,
right. He
what,
doesn't give it away.
Right.
Yeah.
He doesn't react to Fredo.
Right.
Like if you were just standing there next to him, you probably wouldn't have like noticed anything going on. And so that through the kiss of death at the ball, an hour later or whatever it's supposed to be, is just such a like, oh my God, like stab me in the heart. So yeah.
So
Fredo, man. Why? Why you gotta be like that?
So do we think that this movie has stood the test of time? I mean, I'm just gonna say fucking yes, of course.
Like a resounding yop.
It's okay.
Yep.
Oh, do you guys know what the word on the boat, Moshulu, the name of the boat that he comes in on?
No.
Moshulu. It's a Seneca. I looked it up. It's a Seneca word that means fearless.
Thank you for looking that up. That's so nice.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
No, really, I really appreciate that.
I did some
glad I
homework
know.
this time.
I really am.
One point I was going to make earlier when we were when Alicia, you brought up the anti-hero thing. To me, I think there's so much of the pop culture phenomena around the Godfather trilogy, where even if you've never seen the movies, oh, okay, it's about the mafia, and oh, you can see like the logo or the puppet strings thing in your head. So I wonder how many people who are like, oh yeah, that's cool, like, have they actually seen the movie? And if they have they seen it since they were like a 16-year-old, to like actually be like, oh wait, because they can seeing it when you're younger and being like, oh yeah, man, that's pretty cool, yeah, but not really grasping it. So yeah, I just feel like there's like this thing around it where if you haven't really watched it, you could see it as like this aspirational thing almost. But then when you do, you're like, well, yeah, money's nice, but like, so is having your family.
I also think that like there has been so much, or in the last decade, I guess, or the last 2 decades, there have been so many. I know I mentioned like Breaking Bad as an example earlier, but like even The Sopranos, like I didn't watch The Sopranos, but I know the gist of it is that they're taking this character that's a bad guy or whatever, and they're like they're like taking you into like his inner world and like giving you a peek at what's driving him or how he feels about what he's doing, I guess. And I understand why people get sucked into that and why it can sometimes feel like it's being glorified, as opposed to being like condemned. Like if you don't take it all in, if you watch like only a few episodes of The Sopranos and you're like, oh, cool, like, I don't know. I'm not saying it shouldn't be done or that it's not, or that they're doing anything wrong, because I don't think that's the case at all. I just think it raises questions, and there's people out there that aren't going to always interpret what you're putting out.
Yeah.
They're going to interpret their own way. That's what happens with all art. That's what it is. But it's just, I just always think about it. Just something to think about.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've said it plenty of times before, but to me, like, this is one of those movies that comes down to portrayal versus endorsement. It's like portraying something that doesn't mean go out and do it. It's just trying to kind of explain like how someone
I would say
becomes this
actually
way.
Trying to tell you shouldn't do that.
Yeah, I see it as a cautionary tale in this case, but I understand, like you're saying, that some people take a surface level view of it and don't like delve into it and figure out like, oh, this is bad that this is happening to this guy. This isn't badass. It's just fucking shitty,
I think that's why part of the reason why we have the president we just had is because people take the wrong message from things a lot, So anyway, I'm not saying you shouldn't make this type of art at all. Like, I do think it is a cautionary tale, and yeah, I think it's actually very important, but I just wish that sometimes this stuff that happens in society could be a little more, I don't know. But anyway.
So why don't we go ahead to our bonus question? Stephen, you had a question for us pretty tied into this movie and our discussion, I think. So.
Sure. Since some people consider The Godfather 2 to be the superior movie to Godfather 1, which is technically a sequel, what movie sequels do you consider to be better than the original? And I had a couple. I did put one in the Facebook page that was Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. And a lot of times movies like that, they spend so much time trying to introduce the characters and just be pretty that they wait for the second movie to actually tell a tighter story. And that story was just a miles above a better story. So I like that one better.
Mine that I also did put in the Facebook group was Mad Max Fury Road. I could watch that movie just about any day. The other movies are pretty good too. Except maybe Thunderdome, but I think Mad Max Fury Road is a masterpiece. And it's the fourth fucking movie. How'd they do that? Anyway, who's next?
I took a very literal view of sequels being like number 2.
I do too.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. So then it made it really hard for me to come up with an answer. So my like unorthodox, in my opinion, answer is that there are so many movie series that just get better as they go on. I'm going to call out Toy Story, Harry Potter, and shamefully Twilight. And just, I think, with so many of these things, especially, I mean, I guess Toy Story isn't, but like the other two that are based on books, that at least in theory, start off as more children's or at least like tween books. And then as they go on, they get into more complex themes, more adult issues and things like that. So I think with both of those,
What's your answer?
all of those
No.
yeah.
No. You gotta pick a fucking movie.
But see, the thing is, I don't think there's not like one movie, because there's like 8 Harry Potter movies. I don't think there's one that's better than the first one, because they're all better than the first one, because the first one is like the worst movie. And same thing with Toy Story, and same thing with Twilight.
Interesting.
So I think it's like, is it that there's better directors who were brought in? Is it that there's a bigger budget? Is it that just they're reflecting, for 2 of those at least, material that's already...
Because Twilight, I think the first one's the best one.
What?
The rest are shit.
What? The first one is so... I mean, none of them are great.
Okay.
But
Okay. None of those movies are that good.
Twilight specifically.
Yeah,
you're talking
Twilight.
about.
Twilight.
Yeah.
Definitely Twilight.
Yeah.
Alicia, what about you?
I did post it in the Facebook chat, Before Sunset, which is that Ian Hawke, Julie Delpy movie that follows Before Sunrise. I just like the sequel. They finally like get it together, and there's some things that aren't great about that because he's like married or something already. But it's just so romantic, and I don't know. I just love that movie.
Yeah. And Laura?
Well, also like Mia, even though I contradicted her and gave her a hard time throughout her entire answer, I have a very strict definition of sequel. I think it's the second movie that comes from the first one. I do. Otherwise I would talk about Thor Ragnarok right now, but it's not the fucking second movie.
I want to hear you talk about that.
We need rules for a society, and this
Let's
is one
go
of the
hang out. We'll
rules.
talk about that.
Okay.
For me, I chose Trainspotting 2 because even though the soundtrack on the first film is stellar, and the first film has some amazing moments and stylized filmmaking, I think the second one had so much more heart, and I think it's a better film.
Interesting.
So that's my answer.
I don't understand why a sequel is just the second movie. I'm just going to say that, but whatever. It's fine.
Yeah, does SEQ have to mean second?
Second
Or
one.
No.
Yes.
Then what's the third
In
one
Latin.
called?
Well, then Mad Max Fury Road is a sequel to Thunderdome, and it's much better than Thunderdome. So I don't know what you...
Yeah, you could always just say like the
it's always
fourth
the
movie
sequel
is
to
a
the
sequel
last
to the
movie.
fifth movie,
Yeah.
or to the
Yeah,
fifth movie is sequel to the
exactly.
fourth movie.
I guess I should have put the definition in there when I...
Yes, thank you.
No, I think the definition of a sequel is well known, Stephen, and you were correct.
Well, here's a question too, because one
I'm a
thing
purist.
actually, as Alicia was talking about Before Sunset, I was thinking about Dazed and Confused, and Everybody Wants Some.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it. Is it good?
Everybody Wants Some is so good. I would actually say that is better than Dazed and Confused. Personally,
Okay.
as a film,
I should
loved
watch
it.
that.
Yeah, I really loved it. I like Dazed
I
and
love
Confused.
Linkletter.
Yeah. But I think he referred to them, or at least it was considered to
Spiritual.
be a spiritual sequel. So is that a sequel? I mean, he said
a
sequel.
what?
He said Everybody Wants Some was a spiritual sequel to Dazed and Confused.
That's weird.
Yeah. So like, is that a sequel? I mean, I guess
I
so,
don't know.
but
I wonder what his spiritual sequel to Slacker would be.
we'll find out.
Clerks.
God.
That was funny.
Good times.
Did anyone like Mallrats better than Clerks? Or isn't that the second one?
Well, to the original question about sequels that may be better than the original, we had a couple of answers in our Facebook group as well. Charlie said A Shot in the Dark from the Pink Panther Clouseau series with Peter Sellers. And Sid said The Empire Strikes Back, which, yeah, that's one of those that also gets... I feel like that's a lot like Godfather 2, where people say it's better than the first. But I say with that one, like I said with Godfather 2, like it's hard for me to see that as a standalone movie.
Yeah, me too.
but-
I would think more of Empire than.
But I agree that like there's a lot of filmmaking about it that is better and more advanced.
Which one's the one with the Ewoks?
That is Return of the Jedi.
Okay.
Yeah. So Our next episode is Steven's third pick. Steven, do you want to tell us what that is?
Yeah, my pick is Singin' in the Rain, which was directed by Gene Kelly and Stanley Donen. It was released in 1952, and it's available to stream with a subscription on HBO Max, and it's also available to rent via Apple TV, Amazon, Google, or wherever else you stream stuff.
Truth.
And I'm excited about this because we get a comedy movie in there, and there's not a whole lot on this list. So.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That is true. So that's it for this episode of Stereoactive Movie Club. We invite you to join us on our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/Stereoactive Movie Club. You can also email us at stereoactivemovieclub@gmail.com, and you can leave us a voice message.
And I hope there's some heavy breathing on it.
Yeah. But you can do that at anchor.fm/Stereoactive Movie Club.
Stereoactive Movie Club.
This podcast is produced by Stereoactive Media.